So the singularity, point of no return, a point where we can't recognize the world before or after it, right? What would you say is I guess like an important arm of the singularity?
Yeah. Definitely artificial intelligence. I think something everyone's familiar with. If I had to break it down into three categories, of the singularity, I would say artificial intelligence / robotics. The second being nanotechnology, actually moving individual atoms and molecules. And then the third being reverse engineering of the human brain or different biological systems. And the cool thing is that, developments in one will impact the other one.
Totally.
So it's a constant feedback loop where these technologies are bettering the other categories. But I think artificial intelligence is kind of a good place to start, just being that the idea of a machine that actually does think, or maybe, is conscious in some way, that is really what we're looking forward to.
Do we need consciousness or do we need it to think?
Right.
And is there a difference?
Yeah. No, these are great questions.
I don't know. Like, I'm genuinely asking.
Yeah, I think it was Alan Turing, one of the fathers of modern computing, had to test the Turing test to see if computers were conscious. I'm not exactly sure the details, but it'd give you responses based on what you input. And some of the different iterations of that test recently, I think tricked people into thinking it was like a 13-year-old Ukrainian boy or something. And so they've actually gotten computers to trick people to believing it's a conscious human.
Yeah.
But again, the question is, was it actually conscious? Or was it just a simulation?
Yeah, and in that case in particular, no, it definitely wasn't conscious. It was just a clever program that was able to say enough convincing sentences. But I think what we're talking about is true, genuine consciousness.
Right.
Like an actual thinking. It has feelings. It has, a perception or maybe really just an awareness of them in the 3D space.
Right.
Of them as a moment in space-time.
Right, and I think that's where you have to marry those three technologies to even get close,
Oh, for sure.
It does have to have some connection to the world and be able to interact rather than being just a software in a computer,
Yeah.
But we were going with this, but
as far as think about the consciousness part of it is the ethical question.
Yes,
right?
That's right.
So that's kind of where I was going with the consciousness, because you could have a super artificial intelligence that maybe isn't conscious but is able to think. It's able to understand what you're saying, and it's able to process it, and it's able to give you the answer to the request, right?
Right.
More of the genie type. Are you familiar with the different types of AIs?
The genie in the bottle.
Well, yeah, there's the genie. I don't even remember all of them, but it was in Nick Bostrom's book about superintelligence. This is the one that freaked Elon out. This is the book that made him then paranoid about AI. And in that book, he describes different types of AIs that we could create. And the genie was one where it's you literally ask it to do something and it will make it happen. Meaning, not only can it give you an answer, but it actually has access to physical resources to build the thing that you then asked it to make. And then there's another type, which is an oracle. Yeah, that was the other one. And the oracle is the one that just answers questions.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this? Or whatever. So which one do we really need to make the singularity? And does it even matter?
Yeah, great question. Because I think what it is comparing the computer's ability or how many calculations per second. I think humans are at 10 to the 14th or 10 to the 16th calculations per second. So one of the questions is, once a computer can do that many calculations per second, is it conscious? Is it aware? One of the great mysteries of what's going to happen. But I think there's also the other debate, kind of veering out of technology, but what is consciousness?
In the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that we tend to assume we have an idea of what it is, whereas maybe it's generated in the brain or what have you. But just going off of any ancient mysticism or even shamanic practices, it could be a lot more involved and in depth than that.
Yeah.
Rather than just this, the firing synapses in your actual brain.
Right. I personally feel there's some other elements to it. But I don't know. I don't have any scientific basis in it. I'm not some neurosurgeon or,
Right.
And even if you were, you don't really know how the brain works,
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. what is consciousness? I don't know.
Right.
You know, I think we have it, but maybe we don't even have it.
Yeah.
You know, but it feels like we do. It feels like we have consciousness, whatever we believe that to be. It feels like we have it, even if we don't understand it.
Totally. We know we're here.
Yes.
It's kind of the...
Yeah. Is self-awareness the measuring factor? Because like a dog knows it's here too, but it doesn't really know it's here.
Right.
You know, it's aware it exists, but it doesn't really think about, wait, what's existence?
Right. Yeah, and so the thing with the human brain is the neocortex. Mm-hmm. That's where all of our abstract thought comes from, as far as poetry, music. So, and you know, we've got these large heads, and we've kind of done as much as we can with our enclosure. Mm-hmm. We've kind of gone as far, you know, as getting through the birth canal, so to speak, with our heads. You know, like we filled our neocortex, and so what I think with the coming singularity, it may not even be that the AI itself is the conscious one, but it's that we are merging with the technology and almost using it as an extension of our brain, you know, escaping our physical bodies and using that as a tool from which to grow with. So that's, you know, something to be seen. Like, will the AI develop a consciousness of itself, or will its consciousness be its merging with ourselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because if it merged with us, then we already know we have this, at least what we believe is consciousness, right? And so if it merges with us, it gains our consciousness, guaranteed.
Right.
But if we create it on its own that isn't, you know, I mean, it's merged with us in a sense of data, right? And like the information that it's using to then understand how the world works, you know, based on what we've collected over the years. But then like, is it able to gain its own form of consciousness through all of that information,
right? Through
its ability to perceive? When we figure out that equation that allows it to think about things in at least similar way to how we do, you know, does it make it conscious?
Yeah. I think one other thing too on that is machine learning. Mm-hmm. Instead of giving it a bunch of commands, almost just letting it figure it out itself.
Yeah.
You know, almost like a toddler or a child would. And seeing, you know, then can the machine teach itself new information? And then from there, you know, it's kind of a runaway, slippery slope as far as like, could it, it'll just keep teaching and refining itself.
And it will never forget.
Right.
It's not a human. It doesn't have the same flaws that we have with memory.
Right.
So it would be able to remember everything perfectly, and it could retrieve it at any moment. Like that data is always just a search away within its own system.
Yep.
And that's the fascinating part about it. And that's where like you get the concept of like an oracle, where you can ask it questions and it just literally has every answer in there. And it not only has every answer, but the idea of the oracle is that even if it doesn't have the answer to your question, it understands your question truly. Like it understands what you actually mean, even if you ask the question wrong, right? It understands what you mean. It takes the data it has, and then it uses its own abilities to analyze that data, cross-reference, and then create new conclusions.
Right.
That is like...
Can infer.
Yes. It needs to be able to have its own, like, I don't want to say opinions, but I guess kind of. Like, it kind of needs its own view on things. And so then, is it conscious?
Right. And then given all that, I mean, you know, maybe on the little more darker side of things, there's, of course, you know, what if this AI is conscious... What are its motives? You know, once it realizes it is trapped in a computer or, you know, a software, I think that's people's biggest fear with the singularity is, you know, I think maybe like the 3 most recent movies to encapsulate this are Blade Runner, probably iRobot, and then
Ex Machina.
Yeah, exactly. And so it really becomes all about what ifs, and coming back to the definition of the singularity. We can't see beyond this point.